it's me, back again. I wanted to make an apology for last month. This video was actually supposed to be uploaded last month, but unfortunately the voice actor that played Dale Gribble, Johnny Hardwick, passed away. And I promised him a couple years ago that I was going to make him a video on my personal top 10 favorite episodes in King of the Hill. So I decided to put a hold off on this one. This has been one of my most requested videos, which is something I never thought that I would ever get. I really didn't think that Cold Case was going to get as popular as it did. And it really got freaking popular. I couldn't believe it. I've even gotten new viewers into the show, and it kind of just blows my mind that I was able to do that. Maybe there'll be a physical DVD release of the show finally. Hopefully it doesn't get the Daria experience where they wipe out all the music if they put it on DVD. But anyhow, yeah, Cold Case. These are the runner-up episodes. These episodes basically are a mix of my top 20, I guess I could go with that. That would be the best way to say it. But, yeah, Cold Case, however, doesn't have a physical DVD release. But you can stream it on the Roku channel, and you can stream it on HBO Max, which is good. And all the music and etc. is still there. Maybe someday, hopefully, there will be a physical release media of this show. I do hope for that. But anyhow, my runner-up episodes are definitely something that I really wanted to talk about. Because I have people still commenting to this day on this 2-year-old video. This video that I made 2 years ago has blown up as people are like, you forgot this episode, you forgot that episode, you forgot this episode. And it's like, yes, I know I forgot these episodes. It's crazy, but Cold Case was just that good. There wasn't any really bad seasons. There wasn't really any horrible episodes. There were some boring episodes that had to do with political stuff that I didn't care for, but there were still memorable moments. Cold Case had great music, for one. They knew, unlike shows like Grey's Anatomy and other shows, even Law and Order, they knew how to put in music perfectly to fit the scene and how to get it to explain to the scene. And that's what makes Cold Case so good. I mean, damn, I remember when the show first started airing when I was a teenager, and I was just addicted to it. The very first episode I watched was probably the episode of, I'm trying to remember on the fly, but I think the very first episode I ever watched was probably A Perfect Day, and if not that one, there was another one. It was definitely in one of the earlier season episodes, and yeah, these are my top runner-up episodes, and yeah, they are gonna run pretty closely with my top 10 list. I mean, this shows what I really like, but I do think my top 10 list is much more superior, it's much better done, and etc. My top 10 episodes can't be topped. But these episodes come pretty darn close, especially at number 1. And the main reason that they're not so high on my list is because, well, this is why a lot of the episodes on this runner-up list make me cry. I mean, there are a good round of a lot of them that do make me cry my eyes out. And I'm not a sensitive guy. I don't cry easy. I didn't cry during Old Yeller. I didn't cry during certain death scenes. Hell, even some Disney movies I don't cry when I was a kid. But these episodes, they flat out make me bawl my eyes out, even as a 32-year-old man at this point right now. And that's why a lot of them didn't go on the list, especially my number 1. Anyhow, let's get things started. I'll shut up and let's start ranking these lists. Let's get to it. Top 10 runner-up Cold Case episodes. Let's hit it. Stay with you, stay with me, just one single cheering each passing year. Number 10 for the runner-up list is Glued. Glued is pretty awesome. This one starts out with the murder of a little boy, about 10-year-old, and he is the middle child of the group. Now, this one seems very obvious, but it does have a very interesting ending to it. One that I really do not want to spoil, because even me, I didn't even see this one coming. But the way that they play it out, with the preacher might actually know, or I guess the confessional Catholic guy might actually know who murdered the boy, but he won't tell even if they force him to, and etc. It's very interesting, and this one is more a study of character for Lily by chance, because even she thinks it's wrong, and it's not exactly Lily's story, but it is definitely Stillman's story, because this is a case that has constantly haunted Stillman since the beginning of it. And I really like the character progression that we see Stillman go throughout the course of the show. A divorcee who is in a second-rate office with second-rate medals. Yes, I am quoting George Marks, Cold Case fans, because that is still my favorite episode of the show, but this is a great one, though. This one really does play around with the mystery of who did what. In fact, when I was watching it, I thought maybe his dad or his mom had something to do with it, because they were an overstressed family with a lot going on. But when you see who actually came up and caused the damage and etc., who took the life of the young boy, it goes from being, well, it's ridiculously tragic and bullshitty. In the process of that, there was someone else who was being kind of picketed for the crime by Stillman. Stillman was pretty sure that he was the murderer, causing the character to run and hide throughout the course of the show, only to be tracked down later to finally get his name cleared, and Stillman giving and delivering a direct apology. This one has such good feels in it, and you will possibly cry on this one. I know I did at the very end. The very ending soundtrack to the song from Phil Collins, or Genesis, Follow You, Follow Me, is just wonderful. It just flexes in that moment, and it is just so damn good. And this is only number 10 on the runner-up list. Let's keep going to the next round.
Who you really are, I see, Daniela.
Talking about the horrifically tragic to this one, Daniela is probably one of the more heartbreaking cases that probably should have went on my main list, but I honestly hated the ending. Daniela is very interesting. A woman brings in a snuff film that her ex-husband made that involved a possible murder of a woman who may or may not have been killed by him, and Lily and the team investigate to see what happened and who murdered the woman. This one honestly doesn't have a very satisfying ending, though, but it is a tragic love story, a beautiful love story, mind you, and I've just gotta say, this one can be really, really heartbreaking. We find out Daniela herself is actually a transsexual woman. And I do know that a lot of the trans community probably wasn't really touched upon in this episode very well, but I think this one was perfect. This was about one of the other characters falling in love with Daniela, despite the fact that she originally was a he, and he didn't care about that either, but still he was able to turn her away because of his friends and controlling father at the time, causing her to, well, her incident to be solved in a very sad and very unfortunate way. It's very painful to watch this episode. Now, season 2 to me is easily the best season of the entire show. I mean, there's just banger after banger episodes. And Daniela is probably the most heartbreaking of the entire series, too. One of the most. I apologize. This one's ending goes from being so darn good and going from, it starts out with a really strong start as a good love story to being extremely, utterly tragic. And I really do not want to spoil what happens in this entire slew of episodes. It is just so good. I mean, this one I do remember watching as a teenager, and at first, when I watched it as a teenager, I was maybe about 13, 14, and I didn't understand why he still loved Daniela and etc. after finding out her secret. But as an adult, I more than get it now. It is tragically beautiful. But then again, in the very end, he could not save Daniela from her fate. And in a way, he felt he was the cause of her incident, which I really do not want to spoil for anyone. Fantastic show, fantastic episode. You gotta be there to watch it. It's just, season 2 is a damn good banger. That's all I'm gonna say. Let's go on to the next one.
Answer to a long and painful fight. Truth be told, I've tried my best, but somewhere along the way.
Okay, The Promise is another very heartbreaking episode. One that I really, really cry on. I'm going to spoil a lot for these guys that are watching this. About 80% of the episodes on this runner-up list, the reason they didn't make the main list is because I pretty much cried like a little bitch on most of them. And yeah, this one is no exception. It is a very heartbreaking episode. It starts out with a father trying to solve the murder of his daughter, which was framed as an accidental fire. The fact is that she was locked into this college frat party thing during a fire, and the fire wasn't set by accident. It was an intentional set, but somebody did leave her in the house and let her die. And her connections were with her best friend, who kind of joined a frat party in college and got kicked around as frat parties tend to do to people. Which, yeah, they made a difference. They insulted her, made fun of her weight. This episode more or less pissed me off because as somebody who used to be really overweight and probably has been since he was a teen, this one kind of crushed me just a little bit. And the way that this character is just set up is just beautiful. They didn't make her a punching bag. She was strong. She was tough. I loved her personality and how strong she was. She didn't give a shit about the frat parties making fun of her, but she did care about her best friend. And the fact is that she had lost her mother in a very depressing way. He makes a promise to her after she passes away that her best friend, will stay in her father's life and become best friends. And the ending to this and how we find out it happens is just so damn horrible, tragic, and beautiful at the same time. I honestly love this episode to pieces, and it is just so well done. But that ending, though, man, it just crushes your soul. Now, how Cold Case works is the endings are supposed to crush your soul a little bit, or you're supposed to either feel validated that the crime was being solved. But the past ones on this list, they're really no validation. You either feel angry at the end, or you feel so depressed that you really need to get a subscription for antidepressants. That's how some of these endings work, and that's why a lot of them didn't go to my main top 10s. Because, well, in my main top 10s, the endings had more of a triumphant ending that the bad guy was caught and they paid for what they did. In this one, well, there is no real bad guy except for the frat boys and some certain people that work for the police department or work in the attorney's office at the time. And it just utterly pisses you off. This one is so well done, but it will break your heart if you watch it. And I'm probably going to foreshadow number one on this list also is very freaking heartbreaking. And not just the ending, the entire episode breaks your damn heart. But let's continue moving on.
Changing 'cause I built my life around you.
Oh man, Detention was also another one that is slightly heartbreaking to me. This one is about a boy who was actually suggested that he committed the end game, and it seemed that his death was not a murder, but it turned out that it was a possible murder, and it has the team investigated. I really like this one because it's more of a 90s feel. I mean, there is a lot of a good soundtrack out of this one, and it's not so depressing than the others on this list. This one I kind of resonate more with because, you know, I'm a 90s kid and I wasn't going through high school at the time, this time period, but I was into like the music anyway. The main cast kind of all meet each other in detention, and basically, yeah, they either make a endgame pact or they continuously try to form strong bonds and etc. Yet the main character, the suspect, you know, the one who was possibly either committed the endgame or was murdered, is forming a relationship with somebody in detention that he talks to online on a suicide or endgame hotline. I'm sorry, YouTube has something very tragic about saying something that people do. And I know it's a touchy subject, but yeah. Anyway, as a hotline, and he starts to fall in love with her, and they kind of join up this whole thing going on. It's kind of beautiful, and she really did fall in love with him. And then he finds out what her stepfather was doing to her, and you think that it's gonna be a big case of, well, maybe the stepfather had him taken down. But unfortunately, it wasn't the end game and it wasn't murder. It was something that, well, I don't want to spoil it, something that could have been stopped. Because one of the teens had an aggression, and he was also treated like garbage by his own family home life. And when one of the other students had a end game pact, wanted to back out of it, it was finally done and over with. This episode was just really good. I honestly love this one to pieces, and I kind of identify with that 90s grunge stuff that's kind of going on through it. The whole Kurt Cobain stuff and etc. going on. I just love that feel because I was going through this time period and I really identify with it a lot. Now, I do think that Thrill Kill, the later season 5 episode, captured it better, so that's why this one didn't make it quite to my main top 10 list. But man, this one is really good, and it does set you into that time period with a pretty fun soundtrack. They got the freaking Offsprings playing just to give you that 90s feel. I love that. I felt like I was watching Daria mixed with Cold Case, and yes, I'm a Daria fan, guys. So let's go to the next one.
On my feet, you know that ghost is me, and I will never be set free as long as I'm a ghost.
Honor is another case of an episode that kind of pisses me off in a way. A man comes back from his days in the force, and basically somebody either steals his identity, which is just complete utter bullshit, and his son doesn't want really anything to do with him. He's found on the streets with drugs in his pocket, and he gets labeled as a drug addict. But the case gets solved more and more, and you find more pieces to this character. Somebody was going around pretending to be his son's dad, which is just utterly screwed up. And this guy, what I think Stillman says to this guy when they're interrogating him is pretty amazing. You pretend to be a firefighter or a policeman. You don't pretend to be a soldier. And as somebody whose grandfather, me anyway, my grandfather served in Vietnam, these guys had to go through hell and back in life. I mean, and only to come back and get spat on by a bunch of SJWs and hippies. The SJWs at the time were the hippies, and Jane Fonda and whatnot. Of course, this guy was also at he was a POW on top of that, and he had to talk to be able to get out of the camp. And unfortunately, his partners didn't talk, and he did have people that hated him. They didn't want him at any funerals of his colleagues or soldiers that he served with. He was treated like crap when he got back, and he didn't have the full use of his arm back. It was a very, very painful and depressing episode, and you kind of sympathize with him, but you also sympathize with the soldiers' families, his partners' families, and etc. You can understand, because my grandfather himself, when he watched this episode with me, said he understood, and he felt that. It was just a completely screwed up thing. You really don't know who to sympathize with this one, but you know who to hate in this one. And you hate the guy that is going around pretending to be him and using his name. And I think this is more of a Stillman story that I like a lot. I do like Stillman's quote at the end. Like I said, you pretend to be a fireman or whatever. You don't pretend to be a soldier. And me, I 100% agree with that. This one did piss me off, but Honor is a really good episode that should not be missed. I mean, I highly recommend it.
Climb a mountain and turn around, and if you see my reflection in the snow.
Fireflies is one of those episodes that give you all sorts of feels, and luckily this one does not have a completely tragic ending. This one is about, sadly, racism, which is, stupid. I fucking hate racism, and I apologize to go off on a tangent here, but it's ridiculous. Anyway, a girl goes missing, and her parents are completely in denial. This is, back in the 60s or 70s, I could be wrong here, and she goes completely missing, and her mother and father stay in that neighborhood to keep looking for her. There are families that do blame certain families of color at that time, and etc. Anyway, the story is this girl befriends a black girl, African-American girl, and they become best friends, and they write to each other every day, and they talk about the fireflies. This one is just so damn good, and the acting in this one is damn near top tier. But, boy, it shows the ridiculousness of racism. I mean, these people were going in and spraying people's houses and etc. and ruining lives and oh my god. This one gives me a whole wealth of emotion, but the friendship that these two have with each other, how the white girl was able to smack the bully guy that was bullying the little black girl, which is just fantastic, and showed how brave she is and that she wasn't afraid, and she didn't want to be looped into racism. She wanted a friend. She wanted someone close to her, and that's exactly what she was after. But the ending to this one, to me, is kind of bittersweet. And I guess I can kind of spoil this one. The bully character acts like he's going to kill her, but he shoots at her, and luckily he thinks that he's killed her, but she didn't actually get completely hit. She didn't die. However, she wanders in a different town, and she's completely forgotten everyone and everything. And this one basically has a very happy ending, because Lily was able to find this girl and reunite her with her parents. Her mom had never given up hope that her daughter was alive, but her dad had already assumed that she was dead. And it was just so beautiful how they got the entire family involved, and the two best friends being related, and that ending song just gives me the feels. I mean, this one was a bittersweet happy ending, and yeah, one of the best episodes entirely out of the entire show. I mean, it's no, Mind Hunters or, The Woods, but it is damn good, and you can't help but really watch this one a lot. This one, I probably rewatched a lot as a teen. See, I taped most of the episodes on VHS when they would air, so I could just sit back and marathon the show. And yeah, this one was always on my radar list. It shows the ridiculousness of racism and how stupid it is, and that the fact that anyone can be friends no matter what background you're from. I love that message, and I love that the little girl didn't die because of stupid asshole racist people. Anyhow, let's go on to number 4.
I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. My guard stood hard when abstract threats.
Forever Blue was another very similar one, very similar to Season 1's Time to Hate or A Time of Hate for the LGBTQ community. And this one was a very different type. It was the corruption in the police force. And basically it has kind of the same message with the police force and A Time to Hate. But this one stars 2 police officers who were secretly gay. And this was a big thing. And how the police actually corrupted to have one of them murdered so they could get rid of it, because they were all a bunch of homophobic assholes back in that time of the day. And it was just really well done. Very, very similar to A Time to Hate, but I think A Time to Hate's message was a little bit better. I mean, this one showed the struggle, A Time to Hate showed the struggle of the community while showing that the police officers were completely corrupted. While this one actually shows the corruption inside the network on how much they were bigots themselves and how much they needed to change that. You really want these characters to get together by the end. And when you found out who did it, which I already spoiled it for you guys, the police officers, the biggest assholes of the group in this one, had it all arranged and done. It was bittersweet. And there really was no justice. I mean, I did smile a little bit when they went down, but in all, there is no happy ending for people that's already corrupted. The only way you could get rid of corruption or etc. is by giving more corruption. And that's just how it works. This just showed the bigotry and hatefulness of the police, but I'm still gonna say A Time to Hate did it better, because it showed the struggles that the community would go through and how fucked up it was that these guys couldn't go out in public. Now this just showed, like I said, the inside of the police department, and it was kind of a bad feel to it, for me anyway. I really just hated how these guys were able to get away with it for so long, and it still happens. There is still corruption in police departments to this day. But Cold Case calls that shit out, and this one is really good. The main characters are a lot of fun to watch, and you do really enjoy the show as it goes on, and you really get invested. You know that they are lying to themselves and they want to be free. It's a very good freaking episode. I probably did cry on this one a little bit too. I cried a little more on A Time to Hate, but yeah, I'm comparing these LGBT episodes because, well, I think Season 1 did it better. Forever Blue, ironically, has the highest rating on IMDb, but I don't think it conveyed its message as well as A Time to Hate. And I know I'm spending this segment kind of tearing this episode down a little bit, but it's a great episode. And it does get you into the feels, and it does make you see that the police force are a bunch of bigot assholes. But let's go on to the next one.
I quit, I give up, nothing's good enough for anybody else. It seems.
The Sleepover is one of those Mean Girl episodes. It takes place in 1990, which is just awesome because that was like the best decade ever because, hey, the Ninja Turtle movie came out that year. And on top of that, this episode was also directed by Emilio Estevez. You know, Charlie Sheen's brother, the guy from the Mighty Ducks, and of course, from freaking Breakfast Club. And they also do a little cameo thing in the Breakfast Club, which is just, you know, nice little touch there. Anyhow, this one is about a girl who is basically a nerd, and she goes over to her friend's place, you know, to spend the night, to have a sleepover. The Mean Girls basically bully her throughout this episode, and it all turns into one giant conspiracy. Also, the guest stars in this are pretty fun too, with my favorite being Lilo's voice actress from Lilo and Stitch being in here. And you already know that, you know, not to spoil anything, she's got to be the murderer because, you know, she lived in a well. In a little ring humor. This one is a very good episode, and it had some serious effort put into it. It starts out more on Scotty's terms, on how he kind of connected with the person that they were questioning as the murderer, but you found out that because, you know, what's going on between him and his girlfriend or childhood love at the time, that he's schizophrenic and etc. and has to take certain medicines. So Scotty kind of forms a connection with him. They bring him in on charges about a girl that was found in the river that they do try to pin on him. And of course, he didn't kill the first girl because of how similar the crimes was, even though they had the same markings, but he did mirror it. He was sort of in love with the murder victim. And the murder victim is just so tragic. She was very likable too. And it kind of makes this episode kind of sad. Just like I keep saying on this list, these episodes are very depressing. The guest stars in here are great, and the direction and acting was all really well done too. I really like this episode a lot. And I'm going to be saying that a lot on this list. It's a great freaking episode. Cold Case is just one of those shows that really was able to hit you in all sorts of emotions. The feels, it can make you feel fear, it can make you do anything. And the Mean Girl episode, The Sleepover, is definitely up here on this list. That's why it's at the spot that it's at now. But obviously, it's not at number one. There are so many freaking good episodes of this show. I could probably go on for, you know, hours. There could be even another runner-up list going on here, but this is where I'm going to stop for now, and let's go to the next one.
Spit! I'm not crazy! This is crazy, not us!
You will behave like a young lady.
You call me a lady for a freak!
Next is Boy Crazy, and this one is actually really well done. A girl whose murder turned out to be thought it was a suicide, but it actually was a homicide, thanks to the insane asylums, is actually really well done, and this one is great. Basically, it stars this girl who wants to dress like a boy. She kind of dresses like a guy, and most people thought she was gay, and which she wasn't. And she kind of makes a best friend out of one of the main guys who is also suspected of her murder, not her suicide this round. And it's just a really great episode. And this one just really hits the nail on the head. And yeah, I wouldn't say this one is LGBTQ pro or whatever, but I will say this one kind of grasp the image for girls who, you know, have more manly-ish features, like tomboys and stuff. And it's a very depressing treatment for girls who want to be different, say tomboys. Girls back in these days who were treated like garbage. because they didn't want to wear girl clothes and be a gender role conventional girl or whatever. This one is just very good and yet very, very heartbreaking at the same time. You do feel the connection that he has to his best friend and the fact that he couldn't save her. And basically this kind of goes through what the entire mental institution treatment was going on here with electroshock therapy and etc. This one is a very straightforward premise. It is technically a murder, but it is not at the same time, yet it is very freaking heartbreaking. I really do not like the way that this one ended as much, and I should say that about all of it, but there is no real clear deal at the very end of this one, kind of like on my main top 10 episode cases. This one there is no clear thing. It's the system is corrupt, and that's true. The system is corrupted in this one. Back in this time, people expected girls to act a certain way and etc., but she liked dressing like a boy. Her dad didn't accept that and put her in a damn mental institution. And when she did have romantic feelings toward a guy, he kind of turned her away and he felt awful about it. This one can be extremely heartbreaking, and I really don't want to spoil completely how this one ends like I did with some of the others. This is one you got to watch from beginning to end because it is just so darn good. It is very interesting and yet at the same time very tragic. Luckily, the world has more of a grasp on the tomboy situation and stuff. And I don't know why I call it a situation, but you know what I mean. The world has more of a grasp that we don't enforce gender roles on people like we used to anymore. I mean, hell, I was in high school and I wore purple. I'm a man who wears purple. I love purple. Purple's my favorite freaking color. Don't judge me. I love purple and I wear it everywhere. I have like 7 Under Armour shirts that are all purple. So that's my thing. I even wear a purple coat. So yeah, I would wear purple in high school and I got accused of being gay or fruity or trans or whatever. Whatever the hell people wanted to accuse me of, I got accused of it. I got called the F word for many years because, oh no, a man wore a purple shirt. That's just, boys don't wear purple. Hell, purple is the color of my birthstone. Anyway, yeah, I kind of connect more to this episode because, you know, colors and etc. should not be enforced on a person like this. If she wants to dress like a boy, wear her hair short and etc., that is her business. It is such a good episode, and I'm getting completely off topic. Let's move on. Oh, Lord. A perfect day. You know, a lot of people left comments on my video that, hey, you didn't put this on your top 10 list at all. And, well, this episode made me depressed through the entire watch. And it just, oh my God. It's a mixture of making me angry, yet making me kind of sort of happy just to crush me. A woman gets a girl's body washes up on shore, a little girl, and you find out she has a twin sister and a whole family as to where her mom tried to leave her and etc. And yeah, it's just seriously messed up. It's about the abusive system that went on in the house, and this does show the police corruption because the man who was beating his wife and beating his daughters was a police officer, a very well-respected police officer. So he got to beat the living piss out of his wife and children just because, you know, he can. This episode enraged me. It enraged me that the man in question who did the murder, who caused the murder, was never brought to justice. Or was he? Throughout the run of this, when they are called for a domestic disturbance to the house, another police officer was there,
and he noticed it too. Back in the 50s, they did not have, domestic abuses and etc. like that, So he knew what was going on, but he couldn't report it. He fell in love with the mom, and he got them to escape her husband and leave into a battered home. They got all together and etc. It was beautiful. And the first run of this, it fools you into thinking that it's just going to be great, but it gets worse. One of the twins is brutally killed, and they don't take any time to reveal that it was her abusive father that did it, dropping her and letting her die. The mother did the best choice she could and left one of her daughters in a church and abandoned her just so she could have a better life. She went hiding, while leaving the cop who fell in love with her through the thing alone. And he stayed alone too. Until one day, a few years beforehand, her abusive husband ended up being killed. In one of my favorite lines of the show, where he says, "Tell her Art took care of it." And they do have a happy reunion at the end. This episode broke my heart. Like, how I just said earlier and throughout all the other episodes that it's just so sad and depressing, and that's why this one I intentionally didn't want to put it on my list, because watching it and talking about it gives me feels, and this one is just so painful to watch. This showed the corruption of police officers and how they could get away with abusing their wives and beating the shit out of people just for the hell of it. This one captured it all the best, and I would say that this would be my second favorite episode of Cold Case if it weren't for the factors that this little girl shouldn't have died and this family should not have gotten separated. A Perfect Day was just beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful episode, and I can't watch it a lot because it just breaks my heart to watch it. It's a very painful episode because the man who did it, even though he was technically brought to justice by the mom's boyfriend that she was having an affair with, he still got away with it. But however, his name would never be the same, because even Officer Stillman later on has his picture taken down in the police officer little bar that they go to. They took him down out of the hall and they told them what happened. Everything about this episode it's a perfect episode. I would even go as far to rank it as good as Mindhunters and The Woods. It is that good. It's very heartbreaking and it's very hard to watch, but man, I love about every second of it. Every little portion of this episode is just perfect. The music, the setting, the story. It's an episode that I would honestly rank 10 out of 10 with its perfection. It's just very hard for me to watch. And yeah, I sound like a wuss, a guy who's interested in this kind of stuff, but it is just very heartbreaking to watch. And that's why this didn't even make my top 10 list on the original list I did 2 years ago, because, well, this episode is depressing. It hurts to watch this particular episode. But you know what? It's still very, very good. And yeah, all the people commenting on the video to it is completely and utterly right. It is a perfect episode. And I will say, yeah, A Perfect Day does deserve its title. It will break your heart, it will make you cry, and it will make you happy smile a little bit. And it's worthy of being number one on the runner-up list. I'm sorry to everyone that I didn't put it on my main original list, but I had so many reservations as to why. And that's the end of the video.
That was it. That was a lot of fun. I told you guys there was a lot for me to go through. And yeah, I'm sorry if I kind of forgot character names of certain characters or I didn't explain the plot too well. But some of the character names that were used in the show that were just one-off characters are not very memorable. I mean, the performances are. They weren't as memorable as, say, Mindhunters or anyway. Anyhow, that about does it. Next month, I am doing a retrospective of a TV series that I have wanted to talk about for years. And I'm talking for years because I have been the biggest fan of this show for a long time, and it is easily one of my favorites. So join me next month as I go in full detail about Daria. Oh yeah. I'll see you guys next month. I hope you guys like Daria. Anyhow, if you have any suggestions for another retrospective or top 10 list, leave it in the comments. If there's another cold case list that you want me to do, leave that in the comments. Always remember, I'm listening.
Hello, this is Corey Feldman. Welcome to my studio here in Los Angeles, California. And I just wanted to pop in to say congratulations to Tim. Mr. Tim, I hope everybody's enjoying your videos. He's got some great content, and if you're enjoying his content, make sure you click on that little button right there that says subscribe. Why? Because everything on his channel is Bossa Nova. That's right. Congratulations on your channel, Mr. Tim. I'll be following you, and I know everybody else will too.